All right, everybody, I have on the podcast with me today, Mr. Caleb Chen. Caleb, where are you from?
So I was born in California, grew up in Kansas, and was living in New York City. My stuff is still up there, but right now I've been in Tampa for a bit. So,
wow, you are literally all American.
Yeah.
All American.
Yeah, all over. Yeah.
All over.
Yeah.
So, Caleb, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So right now I'm an audience development strategist at Wirecutter, which is the product review section of the New York Times. And I've been there for a little over a year now. Before that, I was at BuzzFeed and I just kind of helped build out the social media strategy for the shopping section. And then before that, I was kind of like in news at a few places. But so that's me.
Okay, so you work in social media right now. So what do you think about, before we get started in our topic, what do you think about the state of social media altogether?
Like right now,
I know that's like asking the state of the world, but
that's okay, no worries. I mean, I think ever since like TikTok jumped onto the scene, I think it's been way more dynamic. Because like for a while it was just like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, like the big four. I mean, certainly like Facebook and Instagram, and it's almost like they were just so just dominating the scene so much. And then we have like this new platform that's kind of jumped out of nowhere with like that really just pioneered, like I feel like they cracked the code on how video on social should work in terms of like a full screen experience and like the whole recommendation system. But yeah, I think TikTok is just like the most exciting thing to happen in social media since maybe like Snapchat stories. So I think it's a fun time to be in it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So your background, you have more of a corporate background in social media. Is that correct? And it's really amazing to me because when I read your bio, you're an undergrad still. Is that correct?
What's that?
It says that you're a senior in your senior year.
No, that's on my end, on my site. When I was an undergrad, I built like some parody Twitter account, and that's how I got my foot in the door. Yeah. Okay. I gotta hire a copywriter.
Okay, that's fine. So you've been working with basically working the corporate side of social media. Have you done any freelance work or anything of that nature?
I did like starting out. So after like I was a social media student assistant at my university for a bit. And then, I graduated and they can't keep me on board because I'm not a student anymore. And I did like a few freelancing things, but like that's about it. And like maybe on again, off again, like sporadically. But lately, not as much. So I'm like pretty unfamiliar with that scene, unfortunately.
So, I was going to ask you to compare them, but you're not familiar. So what we talked about before we had our conversation, you've worked with hedge funds. So could you tell me a little bit about the process of how they reached out to you?
Yeah, for sure. So this was like when I was at BuzzFeed, and I think the first time they reached out, it was actually through like it's like a research management firm, and they connect like specialists within like certain sectors with like these hedge funds that are kind of performing research on different on different industries. And I think it's because like my LinkedIn, one thing is like on social, like I'm always like crunching the numbers and making sure like, am I actually like, if I was not at this company, like the next day, would anything be different? And so just numbers are one way to help judge that. Don't get me wrong. I do not like numbers. I just kind of learn how to use them out of necessity and just how they pertain to social, and that's it. But if you have that kind of information and just showing like when this research firm reached out to, kind of vet specialists for the like different hedge funds, that's like one thing they want to see is like, does this person actually know what they're talking about? Like having a qualitative understanding is super important, but also being able to have like those quantitative insights, because that's kind of what they want to see. Like they don't want to just hear things like based on conjecture or anecdotes. But yeah, so every now and then, like they'll reach out. It's like, I've never like reached out to them. It's always like when they're like, hey, like we have like this client, like, and the client's like the fund, that's kind of like interested in X, Y, or Z. So yeah, that's about like the extent of our relationship. And like, don't get me wrong, they're hedge funds. So it's like, they've got money to go around. So I'm never like, no, nice. It's like, yeah.
So you mentioned qualitative versus quantitative research. So how would someone who's, getting their foot in the door, how would they use, basically I'm really asking which one is more important, qualitative or quantitative?
Yeah. So if someone like had like a baseball bat to like my kneecaps and was like pick one or the other, I would go with qualitative for sure. Just because like, and like the first half of my career was kind of based more like around qualitative stuff. And that foundation really helped versus the other way around. I think it's a little bit trickier in the sense where like the qualitative side, just because it's so much more like subjective and harder to nail down, but everyone has like their own like style or what they're comfortable with. And if you can find a way to like translate that through like social media, I think that can really help one differentiate from the crowd, help their presence and whatnot. And the numbers are a way to maybe kind of accelerate that process or just like help guide future like qualitative decisions. That's my take on it. So,
no, it's an honest take. So with qualitative information, what I understand is that it's not the tangible. I like quantitative because it's black and white. You can't tell me what it is, but qualitative is, like you said, it's more subjective and it can change from day to day. So with the qualitative research, do you have a certain process that you go for collecting that type of information?
Yeah, actually. So like a little story is like my first full-time social media job was at a place called Attention, like ATTN. And like this was like after I'd finished a social media internship, but I was still at that point where I was like, okay, I understand like the basics of like, how to get something up on the Facebook, like kind of like optimal times or whatever. But I was still very much like, what makes for like a headline interesting? What makes like a thumbnail captivating? What is like, like just like relatable copy? I was like, I can sort of tell like when I see it, like, but I wouldn't like, it's like coming up with it myself was a bigger challenge. What helped a ton with like qualitative stuff was when I started at Attention, like the first thing we would do every morning is we would sit down and we would the CEO or founder, editor in chief, CEO, like we would like all sit in a room together and they would sit with us in the social media. It was so stressful. And basically our Facebook feed and we would just rip everything to shreds. And we would say, why do we think this didn't do better? Like this headline sucks. This thumbnail is boring. And like with the intent of being like, what should we do next time? So it's like, it's brutal and it was super stressful, but I think it was like probably the fastest way I learned. That's probably the fastest period of growth I've had in social media, just sitting down and having other people take an honest look at stuff like you've put together. Yeah. And then at like BuzzFeed, I would literally just sit and like examine like thumbnails and just like compare them and whatnot. Because they had good headlines, but their thumbnails needed a lot of work. So it's kind of sitting down and taking an honest look, and that's where the numbers kind of help. But yeah.
So what makes a good thumbnail?
Oh my God, I could talk about this forever.
Keep going.
Yeah. Well, one like really guiding principle, like this initial insight is not my own. It was Matthew Siegel at Attention, who's like the founder or like editor in chief. When we were at Attention, we were covering news, and we found like those stock photos like did not perform nearly as well on Facebook versus just like content that looked like it had been shot from a phone, right? So it's like if it's a screenshot or it's like someone taking a selfie or something like that would almost always overperform on Facebook. And that was with news. And then when I went to BuzzFeed, I'm shifting from news to e-commerce, and I had no like e-com experience. But it turns out just like the human behavior like kind of stays the same, right? Like the content, the subject might change, like from news to e-com, but the human behavior is still the same. And it's I think with like user generated content, it's just more relatable. It's like that's what your friends are uploading onto like Facebook or Instagram or something. They're generally not taking like pictures from like a Sony a really nice Canon 80D or something just from a phone. But yeah, I could talk about like just thumbnails forever, and it's interesting because like YouTube, like those YouTube creators are really good at it. They're on another level.
Yeah, they are very good at it. The what do you call it? To me, I just go for whatever color pops out to me. Yeah. But honestly, they could have like some better type of psychology behind why I'm choosing one thumbnail over a certain thumbnail. Yeah. So if you don't mind, tell me if you don't want to, and I can take it out. But do you mind divulging into what you did, particularly at BuzzFeed and also the New York Times? Just because BuzzFeed at one time was like the king. Yeah. BuzzFeed was the king. And now it's a different world on social. You don't see as many of their shorts. I really just see their stuff, honestly, on Snapchat. So just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's like not just like BuzzFeed, but publishers in general. I think because like with the media industry, like it's like, what is it? Facebook, Google, they tend to like, capture a lot of the advertising revenue, and it doesn't really get passed along. So media was like definitely in a tough spot, still kind of is, if they're relying on advertising. One cost of that was, I think, like either with a lot of media companies, I don't know if you've noticed this too, but I feel like a lot of the times, like I see like companies like Complex or like BuzzFeed or I don't know, Refinery. I'm just throwing out publishers, but their video content tends to be like aggregated like UGC from like other users. It's like a viral Twitter video that someone else posted or something else. And yeah, it's kind of a bummer in terms of like what's happening there. I hope like media companies in general are able to like figure out like a way to like generate more revenue so they can kind of like invest more in sort of in that sort of talent, which I think some companies are kind of coming through on the other side now, including BuzzFeed, which like they're acquiring HuffPo, so like good for them.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that merger should be coming, probably finalized by like Q2 or Q3 this year.
Wow.
But sorry, did I answer the question? My bad.
No, well, I originally asked you what you did at BuzzFeed and New York Times.
Yeah. Sorry. So at BuzzFeed, so to explain a bit more about what I did at BuzzFeed, like at Attention, it was like figuring out like, because Attention was smaller, so anytime like we had a writer like write something, that post had to do well on Facebook. It had to drive traffic, or else like the cost there is so much more harsh versus like if you're a bigger company and it's like, you know, you can have a few duds here and there, but if you have too many, it's like a huge problem. If you have a few duds at a small place, you have a problem to begin with. Like in this, in the sense where that time could have gone to something else that could have driven more traffic. So kind of focusing on that. And then I loved Attention, just didn't love LA. And they didn't have a New York City office. BuzzFeed had an e-com social media strategist position. And I looked at their stuff and like, I had no e-com experience, but I looked at their stuff and like, you know, in my interview, I was like, look, I can drive engagement and traffic to like a lot of things. And I have no e-com experience, but I'm almost like, I was like, I think I said like, I am certain like I can do the same for you. And if not, like, if I can't do it in 3 months, like just fire me or something. Like I won't care. That's fine. But BuzzFeed, like they had a problem. Their shopping section, their shopping posts like generate revenue. But whenever they would go on social, they would bomb on Facebook. So the shopping team would essentially be like, hey, we have these posts, they help us make money. Please put them on your Facebook page or on our Facebook pages. And the social team would be like, no, because no one clicks on them. The problem was like the shopping posts were not optimized for social. And it really did come down to like, the headlines were easier to like, you know, kind of make more social friendly. And it was really their thumbnails because there were so many products in them, just like optimizing them to be more native to BuzzFeed. And I did that for like what, close to 3 years. And like, obviously like after the first year and a half, like moving on beyond just more thumbnails and like longer term strategy, but just kind of getting those foundations in place so they would be set.
Well, what about the New York Times?
Oh yeah. And yeah, for sure. So yeah, honestly, it's kind of interesting. They pretty much had the same problem. They have Wirecutter, the product review section. They're incredible at search. They're so strong. They're like the best there. And they kind of pioneered the whole affiliate publisher model in 2012, but they didn't invest really a whole lot into social media. And so kind of what I'm doing there is kind of what I did at BuzzFeed, just like building out like this the strategy for this shopping content in a way that's more native to that caters to like an older audience, and that like, and they have different behavior and different like income brackets and whatnot. So basically the same thing, but just for a different audience.
So before you started at these companies, because what I've heard and what I've seen is that some organizations, they don't think social media is worth the investment. They're getting better at it, at it now. So did you have to advocate for, you know, a larger budget or more investing in your experience?
Sort of like at Attention and BuzzFeed, it's very much like I think Facebook at the time probably still is like a huge it's just a huge source of traffic for them. That's probably not Facebook nearly as much as it used to be, but to a degree. And at my current gig, sort of, I'm afforded a lot of like, I feel like more liberty and independence just because the nature of these has been like the building phase. But certainly as just like these social platforms grow and like, I just think it's kind of like, I think the writing is on the wall. I think social will continue like evolving and everything. And it's not just it's been like a few years now. I think we're like social really isn't going anywhere. in some capacity. Like it might not be Facebook, Facebook might not be around forever, but like just some like sort of social media will be around. And it's probably like the most like native way in my mind on like through online to just capture that sort of like top of funnel audience and top of funnel awareness. So I hope I'm never in a place where I really have to be like, hey, like we should have like a social, like build up more of a social team. But I've been fortunate enough to be these places that they recognize the value.
So speaking of Facebook, do you think that Facebook will go anywhere?
I think it's so tragic because like I was like the biggest supporter of Facebook for like the longest time, like, kind of building my career on like, optimizing for like, just like, making myself incredibly familiar with Facebook and how to best like leverage it. I think it'll be around, but it's definitely lost that like kind of like cultural inertia that it once had. And the sentiment around Facebook, how it just like flipped, has been pretty nuts.
What do you mean? Like what sentiment exactly?
Oh yeah, just like the popular sentiment. I think like maybe like up until like 2016, 2017 ish, like I feel like Facebook and like Mark Zuckerberg was like a very like, they were like, generally had like a positive like public reception. And now that's like it's like, yeah, not quite the same, but interestingly, I saw they just released their Q4, their quarterly earnings, and Q4, like they had more monthly active users. Like it just keeps going up. So the divide between like public sentiment and like their user and like actual like usage is pretty interesting.
But where, I don't know, I'm just speculating, like where are those active users? Like, are they in the state? I would not guess so, but go on.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And they've got a problem in their hands where it's like younger people do tend to be like I think younger people do tend to be the gravitational center of social media. And like, they've lost that. They've lost their that like affinity with that audience. So they'll be around. Maybe they'll like keep acquiring companies that are like cool and whatnot. But I think they'll be around for a while.
So you mentioned younger audiences. So a lot of young people are actually looking to enter into the social media field as a career choice. Do you like, what are some things that you could tell them getting into it? And also actually give me some things that like may disappoint them. Don't say, don't give them rose colored glasses. Like what are some things that you experience?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if someone's like looking to get started, like I was very much in the same position. I graduated with like political science and international studies, have never used them at all since graduating.
Wow.
By the time I figured out, it's kind of it's funny to think about when I'm not crying over like the student like loans I paid. But I didn't have any experience. I just knew I wanted to work in social media. It was too late for me to switch to marketing. And this is what I tell people when I go on like TikTok live all the time. And it's a question I get a lot. If I was starting over, and I'm actually doing it now, I would just like build something. I would like the cost of content creation and like the barriers of entry to like just making a social media account and being able to make content for it are so low. I don't think they've ever been lower in the history of like mankind, because we have smartphones, we have a camera, and they record good video, and these platforms are optimized now for these mobile devices. I would say just build something, and whether that's an Instagram account about something you're really passionate about, it can be, or just like even like probably actually if they're looking to start now, probably TikTok, because the organic reach there is massive. And I'm doing that with a few things, but just build something. If you have no experience, just jump right into it, and you'll learn along the way. And I think like when they're applying, either talking to if they're freelancing or if they're like applying for job interviews and whatnot, being able to say, hey, I built this thing. And I think that shows an innate curiosity, which is like super important. It shows that someone's willing to learn. And if you can apply like metrics, if you can be like, hey, I built this account and I grew to by X% I grew this account by X% doing Y method within Z timeframe. I think that goes a long way, because it shows curiosity, like and passion, and also a data focused mindset that shows that they're willing to go beyond just like a gut intuition and just kind of also delve more into like using these numbers to achieve like an end goal. That's what I would do. And that's kind of like what that parody Twitter account was, kind of essentially like in a de facto format, where it's like, hey, I'm building this like Twitter account and it's about something that I really care about, which is like the university, and just like getting engagement on it. And even if the account doesn't do well, just showing that one has like an interest in social media, I think goes a long way.
Okay. You mentioned data as well.
Yeah.
So I'm actually getting my working on a master's right now in data communication analytics.
Awesome.
It's just social media data analyst. So
Awesome.
how important do you think that data is to a social media manager? Yeah, go on.
I think if one wants to step up to the next level, it's non-negotiable. It's like you can be like a successful social media manager and not be like not care about the numbers. That's one thing. But if you want to actually like kind of like step up to like this next tier of like just strategy and quality and like excellence, it's I think people will find that the ones who can kind of at least familiarize themselves with how to use like numbers. It doesn't have to be all of them, but just like the metrics that matter will take them much farther. And certainly I think that helped apply in my case because I wasn't really looking at like click-through rates or and whatnot. And once I realized like, oh, this is like a KPI I need to be looking at. It was like this changed like the trajectory of my career in a lot of ways. So very important. Not like necessary, but I mean that in the most like kind way possible, where it's like if you want to actually like stand out from the crowd, you need to
know it. Okay. Some people may not like that, but I agree with you. It's tough. I'm not a math person, but when my professor is like, we're going to do quantitative research analysis, I'm like, what? And and we're also learning how to use Python, and I'm like, this is stressful.
Oh, okay, so that is like another level.
Jesus Christ, it's so stressful. But yeah, it really does help you stand out. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I don't have any more questions for you. You were so thorough. Do you have is there anything that you would like to add?
I will say like just with TikTok and like, Instagram. Mm-hmm. So just with the context, like I think with iOS 14 and everything going on, Facebook will not have like the hyper targeting capabilities that they used to have. So I think marketers are going to be looking at more like without having like being able to target someone down to the very T, it kind of will shift. I think it'll shift focus back more to content marketing and like, that means like more like influencers, and TikTok and Instagram, well, mostly TikTok, are creating a lot of micro influencers. What's up?
I have an interjection about that. I would like to see a death to the influencer personally. Yeah. I do. I think they need to go. That's one of the reasons why I love TikTok is because I'm connecting with people who like I am actually moved to engage with them outside of the app because they are not influencers. Like Jason Derulo, no. He is super produced. It's just too much. And also, I meant to mention Clubhouse. What do you think about Clubhouse? I've been asking everyone. Are you on it? You're on it. I was in one of your rooms today.
I still love Clubhouse. I used to be really obsessed with it, especially like late December, early January. Lately, though, me personally, it might be a mix of two things. I found I was spending way too much time on it, but also it's just like the quality of conversation was harder to kind of like, it was harder to cut through the noise. That's a problem I ran into. It's still there. It was probably just like an addiction thing. I was like, I'm spending way too much time on this app. But it's fascinating. I guess I should have talked about it more.
Do you think that it has like potential?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it'll be around. I think it'll stick around. But the thing is, I don't think it'll ever achieve like the same heights as like platforms that kind of reward like a more of like a visual, more visual medium through like video or photo and whatnot. It's kind of surprising something like that hasn't existed before, though.
Yeah, it is. Especially with, I think it kind of just goes hand in hand with the rise of podcasts that happened last in 2020. They just go hand in hand. And I was telling the person I had on yesterday, I was in a room that was sponsored by
Is that a thing now? Wait, my God.
It's a thing now. They sponsored the room, the discussion.
Wow. They moved quick on money.
Moved quick, very quick. I was like, this is sponsored. And so what they did was that they chose someone who was in the audience, not on the stage, to win, like, I don't know, I think it was like free delivery at a local restaurant in London. So yeah. Yeah. So I've been in a sponsor room. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see where Clubhouse goes. It's still in beta test. It's still in beta. So yeah. Feel free to use that. Like, we can sponsor these things. But yeah, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. I feel like we were closing up, then we got started back again. Was there anything else that you would like to add, Caleb? Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Just one last thing, like if like someone does, I just feel like one question I get a lot on this like social media TikTok I have is like becoming like an influencer or striking brand deals. Just like capturing those numbers, you come in with so much more leverage with a brand and negotiate. If you don't have them, you're already like in an under leveraged position. That's my one suggestion to people who want to jump into that sphere. Get those numbers, so because you will have a much better time like monetizing your own like social media accounts, if that's something that those people are interested in. But
he's telling the truth, guys. He's telling the truth. Yeah, he's telling the truth. It's all about the numbers. These companies want to, help their bottom line. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway.